where does all sound come from? It comes from silence. And actually the Vedas, which is the oldest recorded knowledge in the history of the universe, say that within silence, within the field of silence, it's actually an oxymoron. It's not just empty, flat silence, but it's actually made of sound. All vibration begins within silence. Silence itself is a sound.
Namaste. You're listening to the Sivana Podcast. Join us on an exploration of Eastern spirituality, yoga philosophy, and conscious living for the new age. This podcast is a production of SivanaSpirit.com, where you can find a large selection of Om and yoga clothing, spiritual jewelry, and unique fair trade gifts from the Far East. Now here's your host, Ashton Szabo.
Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the Sivana Podcast. I am Ashton Szabo, your host. Today's show is all about meditation in the mind. Our guest is Anne Purcell. She's an award-winning author and musician who's been teaching Transcendental Meditation around the world since 1973. She currently oversees the teaching of TM in girls' schools and communities in several countries in Africa. And her latest book, The Transcendental Meditation Technique and the Journey of Enlightenment, was published in March of 2015. She also has an album, her seventh, that's going to be released sometime in July of this year. Really happy to have her on the show today. Anne, welcome.
Thanks so much, Ashton, for having me.
Absolutely. We're excited to have you. So I've heard it before, and I think I agree with it as well, but I'm curious to hear what you feel, that there are no techniques of meditation, but rather there are only techniques that lead you to meditation, as meditation itself is kind of describing a process perhaps beyond the mind. One, do you agree with that? And two, you're a practitioner of transcendental meditation. For listeners that might not be familiar with, what differentiates that technique from other forms of meditation?
I think what differentiates is actually in your first question. You talked about meditation, and it's like there are no techniques, but you're right. We are meditating all the time because meditation means to think, to meditate, to reflect, to contemplate, and that is what the word meditation means. Now, the difference between to meditate, which we all do in our own way, sometimes you can be given certain thoughts to meditate upon, and that's a type of meditation. But the difference between transcendental meditation, TM for short, is the word transcend. Transcend means to go beyond. So you actually go beyond the surface thinking level of the mind, and that's the level of the mind where we meditate on. And you experience finer and finer and finer, quieter and quieter and quieter states of thought until you actually transcend all thoughts. So there is no meditation at that point. It's just pure being, pure stillness. And also, it happens automatically. There's no trying to get there or trying to empty your mind of thoughts. It's a very automatic, natural process.
And how did you get involved with transcendental meditation? It's a tongue twister to say some reason for me, but yeah, TM is the short version.
TM
yes.
for short.
Yeah.
Well, I was 18 years old. I'd heard about it in high school the year before, but my first reaction was, there's just no way I can sit still for 20 minutes. And then I ended up in England at a school. There were only 12 other students whom I felt I didn't have anything in common with. So I was looking to get involved in something, actually just to meet people. And I saw a brochure I was living outside Oxford, England, and it was a brochure that listed all the plays, Shakespeare plays and lectures, and I saw an ad for transcendental meditation, and it just jumped out at me. So I went and learned, and I could not believe that I could actually sit still for 20 minutes and actually enjoy it. So I was hooked from day one and have been doing it for gosh, 43 years regularly, absolutely regularly, all these years.
And how would you say that your meditation practice impacts your daily life, like the day-to-day experience of your life?
Gosh, there's been so many changes over 40 years. I would say the first thing I noticed is I started to notice nature around me. It was like everything woke up inside of me. It was like something had been taken off my eyes, a blinder, and everything started to look so vibrant and fresh. But the next thing I noticed that I was able to focus in my schoolwork. I was a freshman in college, and I was probably ADD before it was labeled that, because I only did well in my work if I liked the subject and my teacher. Otherwise, I was a very restless student. And I was able to start studying. I started going to the library, which I'd never done before. So it really helped my focus ability tremendously. And then I think over the years, first of all, I probably was you could say, pretty emotional person. I had ups and downs like everyone. But over the years, there's been this feeling of inner happiness that just grows more and more and more, where now it feels like a full cup that's overflowing. And also this inner silence that grows, that has been growing over the years. And that is very rewarding, because I feel like instead of getting caught up in every situation, I'm able to observe more and then act in a more responsible, harmonious way. And the most fulfilling thing for me is a feeling that my heart is opened up. And literally, I feel love flowing out of my heart. And one other thing is that I feel it's unleashed this creativity I never knew I had inside me, writing poems and songs and music in the book. And that is extremely fulfilling.
And that was actually part of my next question. I know you've written a lot for Huffington Post. You've had some stuff that you've written on meditation's effect on creativity. I was wondering if you could speak to that a little bit more. How does meditation affect creativity?
Well, where do you think the source of creativity is? If you analyze that, we all have lots and lots of thoughts every day. And the surface level of our thoughts, you can say, is our to-do list and what we have to do to accomplish the next day, feeding your children. But there's those deeper, quieter thoughts, those intuitive thoughts, those feeling levels, those fine feeling levels. And those are the thoughts, you could say, more profound thoughts, more creative thoughts. So creativity comes from deep within. All creativity comes from within. And I have a quote from David Lynch. Do you know David Lynch? He's the filmmaker who's produced
And he teaches a lot of meditation. Is it in schools or to kids or something like that? I know he's got a project, something to that effect.
David Lynch Foundation, which funds teaching TM in schools and prisons and veterans who have post-traumatic stress disorder. But he gives the most beautiful, simple explanation how TM affects the creative process. So this is a quote from David Lynch from his book called Catching the Big Fish. This is him speaking. Quote, "Here's how it works. Inside every human being is an ocean of pure, vibrant consciousness. When you transcend in transcendental meditation, you dive down into that ocean of pure consciousness. You splash into it, and it's bliss. You can vibrate with this bliss. Experiencing pure consciousness enlivens it, expands it. It starts to unfold and grow. You can catch ideas at a deeper level, and creativity really flows. It makes life more like a fantastic game." And that's my own experience. I felt after I started meditating, just these thoughts would start bubbling up inside of me in forms of poems and melodies. It's like, where is this coming from? And I just had to write them down to catch them. And I started to feel more like a vessel where these thoughts would just start flowing through me. But they come from a very quiet, very deep level. And pure consciousness, or the state of pure silence, is the source of infinite creativity. It's that, in fact, the whole universe was created from what physics called the unified field, the source of all the manifest universe. And inside of us, you can say we have a unified field, that pure silent level of being. And when we transcend experience that level, we are experiencing the source of all creativity. And then that creativity filters through our own individuality, and we create what we see around us. It triggers or resonates with what we see around us, and that becomes our piece of art or our song, or a cook, or whatever our field of creative outlet is.
Hey everyone, quick break in our conversation to let everyone know that we've got a big 4th of July sale happening at Sivana this weekend. So if you come over and shop at savanaspirit.com, you can take 30% off your order by using the promo code podcast30. That's podcast30. So the number 30 at the end, podcast30. When you check out, for every $5 you spend, we donate a full year supply of vitamin A to children in India in desperate need. Thanks for listening to the quick break. Now back to the podcast. Well, and one of your methods of creative output is singing. You're a singer. And I know that Maharishi Mahesh Yogi was very much into sound and vibration. He's the founder of TM. Actually, I've spent a lot of time in India, and a lot of that time has been spent living in Rishikesh, where I did go and spend some time at the Maharishi's ashram there. Which, of course, it was abandoned then. But one of the things that I found really fascinating, for some people, they might know this as the Beatles ashram. So the Beatles came there, I believe, in the 60s, and they did a lot of stuff there.
I went there in 1974.
Oh, wow. So it was still in operation then, I'd imagine? Yeah.
Maharishi was there. I happened to go on a trip when he was there in 1974.
So now or at least when I was there, I believe this was 2007 maybe, or 2006. It was pretty overgrown. You got, wild elephants going through there every now and then, and it's pretty beat down in some places. Although I think I heard something about them starting to restore it, which is fascinating. But the thing that really struck me was how many sound domes they had on the land, like how much they were into sound and vibration. One of my teachers in Thailand, we had a giant sound dome on the land, and to just sit in there and do the meditations was phenomenal, just to have that extra vibratory quality. How do you find that singing and meditation complement one another?
Well, first of all, I consider myself more of a songwriter than a singer. I do sing, but I guess I'm very shy about my singing. But how do they complement each other?
Yeah. Or how does music and vibration, so we can expand it beyond just singing?
Yes, music and vibration complement meditation or coexist with meditation.
Yeah.
Well, where does all sound come from? I'll ask you that question. It comes from silence. And actually the Vedas, which is the oldest recorded knowledge in the history of the universe, say that within silence, within the field of silence, it's actually an oxymoron. It's not just empty, flat silence, but it's actually made of sound. All vibration begins within within silence. Silence itself is a sound. And when we meditate and experience the transcendent in time, some people notice it right away, some people in time notice it, they actually begin to hear the silence. And then within more time, they can hear frequencies within silence. And I'd like to give an example of how maybe you've experienced this. Have you ever walked at night And you don't hear the silence because you're walking, you hear your footsteps, maybe you're with a friend. And then you go sit in a park bench, and then you stop talking, and then you notice the silence. Have you ever had that experience?
Definitely.
And then after a while, you're sitting listening to the silence, and then you hear crickets in the silence. You notice that actually there's sound, very subtle sound, you could say crickets in the background, that make up the silence. Have you ever had that experience?
Sure, yeah.
Yes, so that's a very similar analogy of meditators who in time, not necessarily right away, but they're meditating, and after some time they begin to notice the silence of the transcendent becoming more and more clear, and a more mature experience is hearing that the silence is actually made up of frequencies. And physics actually tells us that the universe, the unified field, is just vibrational strings called superstrings. I'm not a physicist, so please don't ask me to elaborate on that. Yeah. But they do say that the universe is just a humming symphony of the superstring. So I think that's how best music relates to meditation or silence. And the more a musician can have that experience of silence and those the deeper qualities of his own consciousness, I think the music will reflect that. And we know that silence is very important in music. A lot of people say it's silence that gives the beat, actually.
Well, and you figure the difference between noise and music is that silence, is the space between where you choose to place vibration.
Exactly. And so the more you can experience silence in your own consciousness, I think the more profound, more eternal, more harmonious resonance that music will have in the environment. In fact, in India, you probably heard when you were there of Gandharva Ved music, the ancient classical music of India.
Not specifically, but I mean classical Indian music, yes, but the name doesn't.
Yes, well, Gandharva Ved music, they have what are called ragas that reflect like the morning, the vibrations in the early morning. And then the vibrations at noon, it will be a different raga reflecting those vibrations. And then in the afternoon and evening, night, early morning. So that music, Gandharva Ved music or Indian classical music, is based on the frequencies of nature, which I think was your experience in India, what you called those sound domes, where you can actually hear those vibrations in very quiet places.
We're talking about silence here. What is the silent revolution?
That was a play on, I had read an article by Arianna Huffington. She's starting the sleep revolution, and she is on a campaign to get everyone to get a good night's sleep, because of course there's many health benefits of sleep and there's many ill effects to one's physiology if you don't get proper night's sleep. But then there was another lady who had written a blog on Huffington Post. I think it was called The Quiet Revolution.
I think it was The Quiet Revolution, because I was reading that article.
And so I wanted, and she had written a blog or made a TED Talk, I think, that got a lot of YouTube video hits about people who are quiet and that they should be listened to. And so I thought, well, why not take it one step deeper and call it the silent revolution, or the silent revolution, the silence revolution. And that because silence, the deeper you go into your mind, the deeper you go closer to being, the more power there is. And so I thought, if we have a silence revolution, which simply means that everyone, if they could experience their own silence, they would emit that vibration of silence, which has a very calming, coherent, orderly effect in the environment, that would be the most profound revolution. It would be the basis of all other revolutions. And it would be a revolution of evolution, meaning that it would be all in the evolutionary direction, meaning it would always be harmonious to the environment.
Well, I tend to get skeptical on these, like, well, if we just did this, then the world would be a better place type statements. But meditation is one of the things that I'm a firm believer. If we had it in schools everywhere and teaching kids at a young age to meditate, the effects and the impact that would have on the world would be unmeasurable.
Well, and it's not just based on concept or theory. There's a lot of research over, I think now, 360 peer-reviewed studies that practicing TM actually changes the neurophysiology. Even in the first meditation, there's more coherence between the left and right hemisphere of the brain. And in time, that coherence spills into activity. And other research shows decreased oxygen consumption, showing that the whole physiology settles down. And in schools, it shows as increased ability to focus, improved grades, decreased absenteeism, more harmony in the schools. And it's really based on the scientific research that Transcendental Meditation is getting accepted to be part of all these school projects around the world. Over 300,000 students have now learned TM, thanks to David Lynch and his foundation. So it's not just an abstract, nice thought. It's very concretely changing the physiology of the students to be more orderly, more coherent, more calm within themselves, more able to focus in their schoolwork.
And you mentioned some of the impact that it's having on students. I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about the work that you do in girls' schools and communities in Africa, and how meditation is helping to impact those people in those communities.
Yes, a few years ago, it was in 2008, time really flies, we started a women's wing of the TM organization to do outreach to women's groups all around the world. And in addition, we've been starting girls' schools. The most established girls' school now is in Mbale, Uganda, and the government is now supporting the school, and the school is starting to win awards. But another school project, which is actually in Thailand, it's in a Buddhist school, and over 500 students now have learned Transcendental Meditation. And these students are students who come from very troubled backgrounds, that don't have parents, or often on the streets, or were young girls who were maybe on the streets, selling as prostitutes. And they were by this Buddhist nun, put into their school. And it's all fundraised, it's all to help these girls. And the school in the beginning just didn't even think of having awards or winning awards, but now they're winning all types of awards in the school in Thailand. And I've personally been involved in some school projects in Kenya. We've had 3 schools in Western Kenya in the Nandi Hills area that have implemented Transcendental Meditation in their school with very good results. That school project does not have scientific research, but many of the other school projects have had scientific research. And as we move forward, we will have more research in all these schools in Africa. We actually have a university in South Africa, that has 400 or 500 students that are doing very, very well in going on to get their master's degree and gaining top level jobs in the country now.
Amazing. Well, I love to now, especially in the time that we live in, where we have, the scientific method, as it were, can't describe everything, but what it allows is an opportunity to take a lot of these things that perhaps some of them have been clouded in mystery and kind of more foo-foo-y, less provable types of claims. Now we've got these methods where we can sit down with people and actually test and show like what sort of actual repeatable results can we see from these types of things. So I think it's a really beautiful blend where, yes, science is not going to be able to explain everything, nor does it need to by any means, but I think it is great to have, especially for our Western mind, more verifiable and repeatable data that shows like, wow, how does this stuff actually work? We're not just taking the word of somebody from 1,000 years ago or the guru, but rather like, hey, look, we can show that this stuff works. So it allows us to kind of get behind it a little bit more, at least for the Western, more rational thinking mind, perhaps.
Yes, that you bring out an interesting point, though. Now that it's been accepted more in the West, it's starting to be accepted again in Eastern countries based on the scientific research that was done, that has been going on in the West on meditation. So that's very fulfilling. And Maharishi, who brought TM to the West, was very fond of the phrase, the neurophysiology of enlightenment, because he felt right from the beginning days, he encouraged scientific research, and he felt if it has all these profound effects on the physiology, anecdotally, if that's what people are reporting, then there has to be some physiological changes. And because TM has been taught in the same systematic way all around the world, wherever you go, it's taught in an objective, systematic way, it has allowed objective research to be done on it now for over 50 years. And the National Institute of Health has funded over $25 million worth of that research.
Wow. So what advice would you give to somebody who wants to start or perhaps just deepen a meditation practice?
Well, you can't learn transcendental meditation from a book. The whole effectiveness of TM is in its effortlessness. And most people, when they try to do it on their own, they, quote, try to meditate. They try to empty their mind of thoughts, which is virtually impossible to do. And a teacher of TM has gone through 4 months of in-depth training, really just to give that experience of effortlessness and to answer any question that comes up based on that experience. So as a first step, I would recommend that, first of all, if one wants to find out about it, they can go to we have a website for women called tm-woman.org, or the main TM website, tm.org. They can find out all the scientific research, where there is a TM center near them. And it's a 4-day course, and you learn actually to meditate in the first day, and you receive a mantra. And the mantras are always kept private, because if we talk about the mantra on the surface level, it will be associated with the surface level of the mind. And the purpose of the mantra is to experience quieter and quieter levels. They're meaningless thoughts that have a very positive sound vibration that allows the mind to settle down to those quieter levels. So you receive a mantra and the technique to learn how to meditate, how to use the mantra. And then there's 3 follow-up days, and you're given more knowledge based on your experiences of meditating those 3 days.
And I know you've got a lot on your website. You've got books out. You've got your albums. Where's the best place for people to find you, to get your book, to find out more about you?
Oh, thank you for asking that. My website is enlightenmentforeveryone.com, enlightenmentforeveryone.com. And through the website, you can go to my Facebook page. I'm always posting my blogs. When I've posted a blog on my website, when I posted a blog on Huffington Post, I also post beautiful quotes by Maharishi and beautiful photographs. And also, my book is available, The Transcendental Meditation Technique and the Journey of Enlightenment, through my website, but also on Amazon.com and other major book outlets.
Awesome. Well, wonderful. I've enjoyed talking to you today. I'm sure our listeners have learned a lot and gained some insight into meditation, in particular transcendental meditation. It's been wonderful chatting with you today, Anne. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Ashton. It was wonderful talking with you, and I wish you great success with these wonderful podcasts you're doing.
Thank you very much. And again, we'll have the website and all that in the show notes as well. So if anyone's listening and they're driving or anything, don't worry. You can check out and get that info later, so you won't have to try to scribble anything down right now. For everyone else, thank you so much for tuning in today and listening. Hope you've enjoyed the show. Hope you have a very deep, silent, and present moment. Namaste. Hey everybody, thanks for listening to the show today. Please go over to iTunes, write a review, let us know what you think. It helps us in creating new content for all of you. It also helps new listeners get a sense of what to expect from the show. We really appreciate your feedback. Thanks again for listening. Namaste.
You've been listening to the Sivana Podcast. To find out more about Sivana, go to SivanaSpirit.com or follow Sivana on Facebook at Facebook.com/Sivana Spirit. For daily inspiration, check out our blog at SivanaEast.com. Be sure to join us next week for a new episode, and thank you for listening to the Sivana Podcast.